Well, hey, everybody, thanks for joining me today. This is probably a pretty dumb podcast for me to host. Um, like true confessions, this podcast is basically how you don't ever have to hire me. And you don't ever have to do a search again because we've got Jenni, and I think it's right. It's Catron, not
That's right.
Catron. And Jenni's with us, and she's going to tell us how to retain your current staff. Now, you may have some staff that you really don't want to retain. That's a different conversation, different podcast. But this is I think this is the competitive advantage that people need to be chasing for the next 10, 15 years. We can go into reasons why, but the people who can keep their staff a little bit longer will win. So how do you not have to hire William? That's kind of what we're talking about today. And maybe, Jenni, maybe you could talk a little bit about, I think everybody knows you're the queen of culture. You get a culture problem, you go to Jenni. I wonder if you just kind of give us an overview of where you're seeing this whole culture conversation, this retention. Like, why now? I've heard culture for years. Why all of a sudden are we having to listen to this again?
Yeah, that's good. Well, and thank you for all of that. It isn't my goal to put you out of business, William. I feel like we just have such a great partnership, and it's a both and, right? Because a healthy and growing culture still needs to add additional team members. So maybe not, it's not much a replacement, but it's the addition of staff because we're growing, which is why people need Vanderbloemen. No, I do think, you and I have both been passionate about this subject for probably as long as we can remember, but this idea of healthy staff culture, I believe it's always been exceptionally critical, but I think after the couple of years of chaos that we've experienced and how much it's impacted our work dynamics, it's impacted all of our worlds and all of our lives, but for organizations, the dynamics of our team have been really just rattled. And that's been to varying degrees, depending on, where you are, what type of organization that you are, and whether you got staff back to the office sooner than later, whether you had to be remote for an extended period of time, depending on where you live and what part of the country that you're in, or whether you decided to do something more hybrid or work from home as more of a permanent solution. So every organization I'm talking to has had some level of upheaval around the connection and engagement of their staff, even if it's just the physical proximity to one another, right? Like that was adjusted at least for a short time, but for many, I'm working with some organizations where they're still not back in person. And now the questions are becoming, are we going to stay remote? Are we going to do hybrid? Now, what are the expectations? But all of that has splintered connection for team members. And that's why I think it's so critical that leaders are looking at this and going, every leader's felt it. Every leader's felt the bit of disconnect with their staff and the difficulty it is in getting people kind of rallied and connected around a sense of purpose and mission, and again, to varying degrees. But then that's been compounded by the questions team members are asking now. So there's some interesting research that is coming out, and Barna has been doing some research that, and I've read in a number of different places about just what employees actually want now. I saw a stat this morning that said 60% of employees want a flexible work schedule. 60%, and then 25% are considering leaving their job. And that's probably the lowest percentage I've seen. I've seen up to 40% of people are considering changing jobs. And so there's just
that's the whole game. Like the part of me that's young and flexible and wants to move is like, yeah, cool, let's enter the new age. The part of me that's an old curmudgeon is like, yeah, I want to eat a pint of ice cream every day too. And that's not going to work. So it doesn't matter what you want. It's what's going to get the work done. And I need you in the office. And so how do you see people walking that tightrope? Because I think there's a wider chasm between employee expectations and employer expectations and employee desires than there has been in a long time. And I mean, you see it in NFL quarterbacks who all of a sudden say, I want to play for a different team. Well, that was unheard. Like there's a whole employee, I don't want to use the word entitlement because then it sounds bad, but it's bordering right up against like,
yes.
So how are you seeing people manage that? hey, we got to do this to get the work done, but hey, I only want to work on Mondays and from
Yes.
10 to 10:15, you know.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I love how you framed that, of like that chasm between what the employee wants and what really the employer needs. And we're stuck because there's, you know, the quote unquote war on talent, where, you know, finding good talent is exceptionally hard right now. The market is competitive. And so
Almost competitive enough to hire a search firm.
almost, yes, as one should, instead of burning a lot of time and energy trying to hunt people down. And
Sorry.
no, I love it. I love it. Hey, you know, it's part of it. But yes, there is that dynamic. And what I feel from a lot of employers is this pull to, I need to just cater to whatever need or whim or want that I'm seeing. And so I think there's a both and, right? We need to be aware of what the expectation is, because this era of these past couple of years has given employees a taste of what that flexibility looks like. And so they think they want that. We have to, as organizational leaders, we have to figure out, how do we create a compelling enough sense of purpose and mission, and then clarify what it looks like to be a part of this culture and this team. And this is what this is coming down to, is organizational leaders providing really good clarity of why we do what we do and how we do it, which that to me is the definition of culture, of who we are and how we work together to achieve a mission.
That's so good.
And so leaders have to provide that clarity and then give the why. Okay, so this is why we have core hours on Tuesday through Thursday from 10 to 4 or 10 to 3 or whatever, you know, whatever it might be. Or this is why we actually do need to be in the office the majority of the time, because we have a really collaborative nature in how we work together. And that helps us produce the best, you know, whatever we do and the mission we serve. And at the same time, I think it's pushing us as employers to go, okay, where can I give a little flexibility? But here's where this gets us, William. And I think this is specifically I see this a lot in church and faith-based organizations, is we're afraid to give the flexibility because we have not historically had great cultures of accountability. And you can't have flexibility without accountability.
Oh, say that again. Say all that again. That's the tweet right there. Say it again. That was so good.
Yeah, you can't have flexibility without a culture of accountability.
Wow.
And our version, and I'm guilty of this, William, you know, I sat in an exec pastor seat for 12 years. My version of accountability for a long time was that you were here. If you were here in the office with me, I could see you. I knew what you were doing. I had a general sense of whether I had a better sense of whether you were getting your job done and you were, you know, connecting with people and calling people back and getting volunteers in for stuff or whatever it might be. But we often don't know how to do accountability well. So then we're terrified of offering flexibility because we don't have good behaviors, cultures of accountability. And that's the thing we have to learn as leaders, is how do we create better accountability so that then we can offer appropriate flexibility. And again, I think the flexibility is completely dependent on your organization, how you work as a team, the level of collaboration required, who you serve. All goes back to purpose, right? Like that structure of your staff and your office time has to really serve the strategy, the mission of your organization.
Yeah. And I think we are in a season, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but I think we're in, there's seasons of transition. I get asked to speak. Now, don't you want to go to this conference? A conference for search consultants. Like, so there is this kind of thing, and it's a weird deal. But
That's awesome.
I get to go. We're kind of turning things upside down the way search has been done traditionally in the corporate world. So they'll come ask me to speak at things, and I was standing around with these old guys one day, and I mean old by like they've been doing search for 40, 45 years, which is about as long as it's been being done in the country. So I'm like, what was it like, you know, when you were 40? And one guy says to me, do you know why I always booked a first class ticket? I'm like, I don't know. You fly all the time, you know, you upgrade food. And he said, no, first off the plane is the easiest way to get a payphone.
That's crazy.
The other guy standing there, Jenny, he said, I know where every gas station in the state of Texas is that has a payphone. And so I just thought, how different is our world now? If I'm stuck in an airport for an hour, I can actually get work done. Like,
Totally.
it's not the best, but I think we're in a season, and I was reading Leviticus the other day, as one does, but it's actually a one-year Bible plan. And I
was going to say, I'm
there's
actually in Leviticus too, so we must be in the same one-year Bible
right.
plan.
So they go through all this super, I'm sure it's interesting if you're smart, but I'm not smart enough for it to be interesting. This kind of thing gets sacrificed here and this kind of thing, and you use the guts, but not these guts, and
Yes.
all this sacrifice. Okay, so we're finally done with the sacrifice. Now we're going to get to, and your other duties as a priest are, and the very first one, it's really good. I wish I had the verse citation, but it's now your next job is to tell the difference between what's eternal and what's just today.
Oh,
and most
wow.
translations say sacred and normal, right? But the real meaning of the word is what's going to last and what's going to be gone. And I think that is the trick. That's the discernment that
That's
leaders
good.
are facing right now. Like, if you go down the street of everybody's going to stay at home forever, that's toothpaste that doesn't go back in the tube, right? So
Right.
how do you, have you seen people coming up with good ideas on flexibility that have led to a good result?
The second part of that is probably the question mark that led to a good result. I think it's too early to tell.
Okay, fair
you
enough.
know,
That's what we've decided.
I think we're all experimenting, and
Yeah.
I think that I think some of the most thoughtful leaders I've seen do this are making are doing the evaluation of, okay, when did we most need to be together? When was our best work produced? When were our best ideas happen? You know, what's the greatest value of when we're together? And
That's
then
good.
creating that. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of teams do core hours, you know, of like, hey, these are core hours. This is when you're expected to be in the office. This is when we do our meetings. This is when we have more of a collaboration, et cetera. Here's the places where you have some flexibility, whether you come in or not. And it's interesting. I have one church that I've been working with, and they were in a part of the country where coming back to the office was a little slower. And so they just recently started their core hours thing, but they had started like working into staff meetings, and things were hybrid. They were in person, but also online. And what was really interesting, and this is where I think, again, as leaders, they were purposeful to make the in-person experience just a little bit richer. Like there was kind of a reward for showing up in person without saying there was a reward for showing up in person. The real reward was the connection with each other and the time with each other. But they were why is
everybody in the meeting eating Chick-fil-A?
That's exactly right. Right. And it was,
okay.
It was simple little things like that. But then people began to realize, oh, I missed the camaraderie and the connection and just the time with my team, because so much of our work over the past couple of years, especially if you've been primarily hybrid, has become transactional, right? It's like, I reach out when I need to get something from you. I reach out when I need to schedule a call so that we can correspond about this thing so we can get X done. And we've lost those like meaningful moments of connection in between. But the problem is our team members don't always know how to identify that that's why they feel disconnected, or that's why they feel maybe disengaged, or they're considering another job because they feel like they're just going through the motions. Well, a good deal of that is the connection with one another. And until they experience that again, they're not always conscious of that's really what they need. Now, our extroverts kind of get that. Our extroverts are like, yes, please get me back. When can we do stuff together? But our introverts, sometimes they have to be nudged into those environments to be reminded of why that's so meaningful. So I think, to answer your question, because I went on a bit of a tangent, I think just experimenting with, and that's what I've encouraged teams, whatever rhythm you set, first of all, you need to clarify and you need to set expectations around whether we're in person or not, or hybrid or what. Get clear about that and set the expectations, really articulate why do we have core hours and why is that important? But then set it for, hey, we're going to try this for 6 months because we're still trying to dial in what's the right rhythm that helps us all succeed. And
that's the old you served in a traditional church for a while. In the traditional church where it's like, you have too many worship services, it's not filling the room. How do you kill one of the services? So, for the summertime, we're going to cut the service just for the summertime.
Yep.
And then you wait and see. It's that if you give people a terminal, I've said to our lead team around here, I'm not making any more decisions until another year's gone by.
Yeah.
Give me a year and we'll take a look at it and we'll talk, but give me a year. And so far it's working, but I think what people are starting to see from where I'm sitting, and I want to hear if you see this as well. I mean, before the world turned upside down 2 years ago, I was already seeing more turnover. A lot of that's generationally driven.
Yep.
I'm the generation that remembers when Fox started because that meant there were 4 channels and not 3. So, so not for the politics, just a 4th option. And millennials are actually kind of geriatric now, but whether it's millennials or Gen Z, they're used to however many channels I want. And I think a lot of that age of choice has led to shorter stays at a particular company, church, mission, organization. I think that the church used to be, if you made a bunch of money and you now want to do something significant, you think, well, maybe I'll go work for my church. But now you can do something significant, making a chicken sandwich for Chick-fil-A. You can do something significant working at Hobby Lobby, or I mean, every company's got a cause. So there's just a lot of reasons why I was seeing turnover before the pandemic. Layer on that a great resignation. I don't think the 25-year run in one place is going to be, I don't think we're going to see that again, at least for a long time. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, if you can change the average length of stay, like if you think you're going to keep people forever, you need to get over that. And by the way, pastors, I'm going to be a little mean right now. Please don't tell me about your staff. They're not yours.
That's good.
They belong to Jesus. And Jesus got in trouble with his friends for moving from town to town and village to village. Why can't we stay here? No, we got to move on. And when your people move on, it's just a kingdom redeployment, and it's going to happen. So I think the ballgame is no longer how do I keep them forever? It's like, how do I change a 3-year stay into a 5-year stay?
That's right.
And is that where the culture conversation is right now?
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I love your perspective on that too, is like, we are stewards for a season. I mean, that's one of my deep convictions about leadership, is that it's sacred work, because we have this opportunity to influence the people in our span of care for a season. And we have the power to change or affect their life, their story, what's going on with them, et cetera. And so we get this stewardship of the team that we do have for this season, and it is for a season. And I think we have to recognize that the better job I'm doing of stewarding those individuals, and it's a dual stewardship, right? It's like I have the responsibility to steward the unique individuals that God has gifted me for this team. So these individual humans, and then I have the stewardship of the mission. And that's the tension I have to manage, right? Is that I am both trying to caretake this team of staff that I'm entrusted with and make sure we're on mission. And so sometimes those things feel a little bit in conflict, depending on, what this team of staff are requesting at any given time. But so I do think we have to be mindful of how do I appropriately care for, lead, develop this team of people to help me achieve this mission. And the more that I'm on mission, you said this, just that, everybody has a cause and a purpose. Like, this is an opportunity for the church, because this is what we're hearing from younger generations, by the way, is that they want to be a part of something with meaning and purpose, and significance. And gracious, we as the church have an amazing opportunity to be really clear about that. Like, again, you said it at the beginning of the podcast, the competitive advantage. The competitive advantage is that we have arguably the greatest purpose to call people to and compel them to come and work alongside of us. And so, so I just think leaning into that, being really clear about that, helping them see how their gifts and their talents connect with the role that we've given them and how that connects to the greater purpose of the work we do. I said, sometimes as leaders, our biggest job is connecting the dots, right? I'm just making sure that every person on my team knows how they connect to the greater purpose of the work that we're doing. And I think being clear about that, that's going to shape culture, but then being intentional with, this is who we are, this is what we value, these are the behaviors that reflect those values. And when we're doing this, this is how we're able to achieve our mission with, and flourish in doing it.
That's good.
Leaning into those things, I think, do help elongate that tenure on staff with us.
Well, okay, so there's one. I'm gonna put you in the hot seat because we're getting close to the end of our time. The biggest one: preach your vision more than you ever have. Preach your cause more than you ever have. If you can't think of what your cause is, let me give you your cause. Overpopulate heaven. That's a cool cause. Like,
yep, that's right.
It's a positive way to say it. Like, underpopulate hell, if you need to say it that way, but whatever.
I love that. That's awesome.
Okay. Other than preach your vision, what would be a couple of keys to extending retention with staff that you see so that people don't have to hire me?
Yeah. Okay. So, again, being really clear about your purpose. Secondarily,
Sure.
being really clear about how we work together. So I've referenced this a couple of times, but you guys model this at Vanderbloemen. What are those core values that guide our behavior as a team, right? Like, what are the core values that when we are all aligned around these things, this helps me understand, how do I succeed here in this team? And when we get, and it's all about clarity. It's right. It's like, as leaders, that providing clarity for our team is one of the most critical things we can do. And so clarity of purpose, but then clarity of values and behaviors of, this is what it means to succeed here. And so that's my biggest encouragement. If you haven't defined a set of values that guide the behavior of your staff, starting there. Now, that cascades into a number of activities that help that actually become part of your operating system, so to speak. Like, it's not just enough to like declare them and then never come back to them. We have to build them into the ecosystem, but that's really key. And then the other thing is great leadership, is that your team needs your time. So I often tell pastors, your first congregation is your staff. And they're like, whoa, like, because we're so focused as ministry leaders to be thinking about the whole congregation, but your staff are that's your first team to care for. That's your first congregation to serve and pour into. And so oftentimes they get our leftovers. We're so busy doing all the other responsibilities of ministry that we're not giving appropriate time. And I'm not talking about like unnecessary time or, like placating every demand or whim or whatever, but like intentional time where you're meeting one-on-one with that individual. You're helping coach them, give them direction, help answer the questions, provide the feedback, create those conversations that create accountability, right? And that intentional time, seeing yourself as that coach leader for that staff person, is going to just expedite their learning, but also build that relationship that keeps them well connected to what we're doing. So I would say purpose, values, leadership.
Yeah. Let me add one other one. Money.
Oh, that's good.
Sorry.
I mean, like it or not, you got to pay them.
Jesus didn't work for money. Our staff didn't. I'm going to disagree with you, Jenny. Your first parish is your home.
Fair.
If you can't provide for your house, then you're worse than an unbeliever. And a lot of you people out there that are listening are going to quit listening, because I'm going to tell you, you're underpaying your people. And
this is true.
That's why I have a job sometimes. Sometimes people leave over $5,000. You could probably save yourself a lot of headache if you would do we're seeing a tidal wave surge, in people saying, can we please use your compensation tool, which is very inexpensive, but it just like, tell us what we need to be paying. And I'll take it one step further. If you've got, it may not be your highest paid people, but there might be people that are critical to the mission for the next year. Like, we're in a building campaign, so it's this one, or we're in a capital campaign, so it's this. or whatever the thing is you're trying to get done for your city. Who's mission critical for the next year or two? And how do you put them on a bonus if they stay, a deferred compensation, a
That's right.
retention bonus? These are tools that churches have never talked about before, but the smart ones are starting that conversation.
That's good.
And I know it sounds crass. It sounds like you're paying for ministry. Well, you know, they are people, and their first parish is their home.
That's good.
And you can't change that. So yeah.
That's
Well, there
really
it
good.
is. That's do those 4 things, and you won't have to hire me.
Or me, for that
Not
matter.
true. Yeah, no kidding.
You'll
No,
save
the
yourself a
dream
lot
is
of
that
a lot of money.
no, the staff is a fully staffed kingdom would be fine with me. I'd be glad to be out of work for that. But
That's right.
yeah, well, I appreciate you so much. You're helping so many
Likewise.
churches, and I'm so looking forward to our time together at the Culture Conference, which is coming up when, Jenny?
It is coming up August 11th, Culture Conference
right.
2022. So we'll have registration and things will be open soon. So just mark your calendars and then you'll hear all about it.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, if you want to follow Jenny, you can go to get4site.com. Is that right? Did I remember
That's
that
right.
right? Yeah.
Yep, you did.
Yeah. And Jenni Catron, it's not the tequila, it's William, how do you know what a tequila is? That's a different podcast too. Jenni Catron, at Jenni Catron. Jenny, we love having you here. You are one of the family. And everybody out there that's not using her, you need to call her and hire her today. So
awesome.
Thanks for joining us, Jenny.
Thanks so much, William.
Yeah, and thank you for listening. Listen, if you want to get show notes, if you want all those things I just rattled off and written down, a compensation tool, the culture conference, and just go to vandercast.com. Give us your email. It's a segmented list. You're not going to get hit with, hey, do you want to move jobs? It's just for the podcast. Vandercast.com. And tune in again soon to hear another great conversation with people who are trying to make a big difference for Team G.